Hey really people. So in an earlier video, I talked about how shame kills your intuition. And I had lots of questions about, well, how do I get to move beyond shame? So that's what I want to talk about today, because once we move beyond shame, we can free our intuition. We can really start to access that brilliance that our intuition is doing its best to help us access. So, how do we move beyond shame? In other words, how do we move from this sense of shame, which comes from being out of alignment with who we truly are, to shift it into the positive, to having a robust alignment with who we truly are? So, as I mentioned in that earlier video, there's appropriate and inappropriate shame. So with appropriate shame, it actually means that we already have a reasonably robust system, actually, because when we step out of alignment, our appropriate shame is saying, you're out of alignment, so better get back in. Now, of course, you actually would like, we do it better when we have a positive measure of when we're in alignment, not just the negative measure. So if you think about it, you can think of appropriate shame. It's like when you're driving along the road, there might be, guardrails or some, gravel or whatever at the side of the road. So appropriate shame, that's what it is. It's when you hit the guardrails or the gravel and you know from that, oh God, I've got off the road. So you get back on the road. So that is what appropriate shame is for. But of course, that's not the only guidance you have for knowing whether you're on the right track or not. You actually have the windscreen and your capacity to have a look ahead and see if your line of drive is where you want it to be. So what do we use for that? Well, what you want to use is your soul seat and or your core values. Now, these are both measures of or ways of connecting into who we truly are. I don't have time to go into them right now. There are other videos. I'll see if I can link them below. The other thing, of course, is my book, The Soul's Brain, the neurology and logic of your intuition, because this is a lot of the logic of your intuition is actually understanding that it's a kind of a systems-based logic, which means that your system wants to keep resetting you back into alignment with who you truly are. So the soul seat is connected with your immune system, which of course is doing exactly that. So by working with your soul seat, which is paying attention to this point here, there are lots of therapies that work with it, not just fractology, because this is, some people call it the high heart. It's also the T point. The T stands for thymus, because that's the part of the immune system it sits over. So anything that you can do to strengthen that will help you get a more robust alignment as well. The core values, of course, well, that's a more mental way of doing it. I don't mean mental crazy. I mean, in your mind. Because with our core values, we're understanding, or we're finding that singular word or maybe two words that tells us this is what my essence is all about. So if I'm increasing my essence, then pretty much I'm on track. So that's how we deal with appropriate shame, or how we move past it. We move past appropriate shame into actually strengthening this connection with ourselves, so that we get to trust ourselves, so that we know, if I do that, it's going to increase the strength of my essence, and that means I'm on the right path. Now, with inappropriate shame, as I said, I did talk about this a little bit more in the previous video, and I explained that unfortunately inappropriate shame is most often connected with a history of abuse. Because inappropriate shame comes from when we have been shamed. In other words, we've been taught to believe that who we really are is wrong. And so we actually are denying ourselves the one thing that we really need to have in order to move beyond shame and free our intuition. And that one thing is the permission for us to be who we truly are. Might sound a bit daft, but the problem is, I believe, for a lot of people, is that for whatever reasons of their past history, of their conditioning, of society, whatever, they just don't feel that they have permission to be who they truly are. And that just means every day there's going to be some degree of stress there, because everything that they do, they're doing it over the top of some degree of internal conflict. Now, if that sounds familiar, I would really encourage you to go and get help. Contact a fractologist or your nearest therapist. Do some work, whether it's, you do it yourself with meditation or affirmations to find the connection to yourself. Get my book and work through the exercises in there. Do something and keep doing that something until you get to a point where you've cleared enough of the negativity that you can give yourself permission to be who you truly are. Because once you get to that point, once you get to the point of giving yourself permission to be who you truly are, well, it's not necessarily that things get easier, but things do get a lot simpler. Because once you've given yourself permission to be who you truly are, that internal conflict starts to settle. And you can focus then on the skills that you need in order to become who you truly are, which is what freeing your intuition and moving past shame is all about. It's about you becoming who you truly are and beginning to express and live in your brilliance. There are various ways to do that. I discuss a lot of them in my book, The Soul's Brain. And of course, I'll mention a couple of them. The one that I talk about a lot is working with your soul seat. That's what we call it. Some people call it the high heart, or the T point, because that's your thymus. And the other way is getting really, really clear on your core values. Now, sometimes people will say to me that they are really clear on the core values, and I ask them, okay, cool. How many have you got? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, about a dozen. And it's like, well, you've got down to your short list. But in my experience, when you actually examine that list and you go deep enough into it, most people end up with just one, maybe two, but usually just one is most common. And that's amazing, because it gives you such a singular focus in life that it simplifies so many of the choices that we need to make. Because when we have that singular focus, that this is one core value, that basically all the other core values that I think are important, but mostly they're important because they're all kind of related or a sign of this fundamental core value. And when we know what that is, and as I said, I explain how to get to that point through my book, or you can see a fractologist, or you can talk to your own therapist about how to do that. They may have their own way of doing that. But when you get to that singular focus, it simplifies so many life choices, because you can look at all the options and you can just ask yourself, okay, so of all of these options, which of these is going to give me more of my singular core value? And when you make your choices that way, so that day after day after day, you get more and more and more of your core value, and you start to embody that more and more, well, it becomes inevitable that you are going to become who you truly are, and you are going to realize your brilliance. So there you are. So until next time, just keep moving in the direction of who you truly are, and remember that you're brilliant.